Ward 4, Brian Belknap's here. Ward 5, I saw Dave Simpson. Dan Poisson. We've got one at large. If the Brian Carrier's on, I think Faith Fontaine is the only one I haven't seen yet. Doesn't mean she's not on. Just haven't noticed her yet. I'm using my cell, so we'll go live at 6.
I'm just noticing an error on the agenda on upcoming meetings. It has March 23rd and March 25th, which have already happened.
Nope, this agenda up has April 6th and April 15th. Check your date at the top of that agenda.
Maybe you're looking at the minutes.
Yep, are you looking at minutes? Because this agenda has the correct dates of April 6th and April 15th.
Good cough, Adam, right in your elbow.
All right, everyone, it is 6 o'clock. We are going to start live. Welcome to the April 1st, 2020 workshop meeting for the Auburn School Committee. We're here tonight to go over budget as well as hear COVID-19 updates. I want to be transparent in letting everyone know that tonight's meeting is being held through Zoom. It is being recorded and will be made available by the Great Falls TV on the auburnmaine.gov website or on Spectrum Channel 1301, as well as on the city's YouTube channel. In light of needing to have public participation, Katie, do we have the phone open at this time for public participation as well?
No, you're fine with doing it when you're doing it because you have the workshop and people can respond at public participation to what we discuss at workshop.
Okay, yep, absolutely. As well as getting a hold of school committee members through email as well. So with that being said, we are going to kick it off with Katie. Katie is sharing her screen tonight. The way this is kind of worked in some different ways that we've used it is if you can mute your mics, works best so we don't hear background knowledge like my dog's going to start barking again. So it just helps to get rid of the background knowledge. Down below everyone's screen, you have your chat box. So if you want to pop questions while Katie's going through the presentation, but we will be stopping like we did last week or 2 weeks ago, I can't remember now, to have open conversations as well. But if something pops in your mind, just put it in there sort of as a placeholder and we'll come back to it. All right, thanks everyone. You're set, Katie.
Okay. So first of all, welcome. And we're going to spend the first half an hour hopefully tying up the budget that you want to present to City Council. What we've been busy working, and I say we, Adam, has been busy working on is the directive we took from our last meeting, which was to bring the buses in to the budget, and that represented about $174,000. So what I'm showing on the screen is some adjustments that we've made to the FY21 budget reductions. And those things are in yellow. So what we did is Adam went through and said, where could we buy things in next year's budget now with savings that we anticipate with the school closure. And so there's $71,000 of that has been identified, and I'll show you that in a minute. We also, part of what you asked is to look at the iPad lease. And so I talked to Tara Macon, who is the Apple representative that we work with. And so if we were to break the lease, that obviously is not advantageous for us and the reputation and our credit line. In these lease agreements, there is a clause in there that if you run into money difficulties and you can't pay your bills, then yes, you can discuss coming out of the lease. But to pick that we are not choosing to pay our lease is not what that clause is meant to be. And so that would be highly discouraged, and it wouldn't be in our best interest. We made a commitment. We signed a contract. We can pay our bills. So she said that would not be the first option. The second option was that we have paid about 50% of the value of the iPad. So we paid in more. So when we did the lease, there was a total, and then it was broken into 4 payments. And so with the 4 payments, we're ahead in paying some of the value. So you could take, for example, 50% of those iPads, put them on the market, sell them, and pay your lease payment. You can't sell them and put them in a revenue source. They must be that whatever you sell them for would have to be towards that lease payment. Obviously, that doesn't make any sense to do that because one, you've paid the lease payment, but now you don't have the iPads. You're half the iPads down. So that wouldn't be a first choice. And then the third choice was you can pay your lease payment ahead. So whenever you want to pay towards your lease, you don't have to wait for the year the lease was identified in. So you can see that's the second item, $102,895, is we would pay next year's lease payment now with the savings that we anticipate with the school closure. And then we have the Mlti buyout. So remember we talked about there was funds in there to buy our machines, our high school machines now, and that will give our high school those machines next year as the state continues to work on what the funding will look like for Mlti next year. So that is $53,000, and that would also be paid now. We can buy them out this spring. So when you total those 3 things together, we're bringing the buses in. We also added $10,000 to the student lunch debt. Remember, we had $10,000 already earmarked, and we've added $10,000 more for a total of $20,000. So part of it is when a student leaves our district with debt, we pay the lunch program off for that debt. And then we have additional dollars that if at the end of the next school year, there's a certain amount of debt, you can put that money towards paying off the school lunch debt of students that are here as well. We may have further discussion on that $10,000 on exactly how you might want to allocate those dollars. So those were the major changes to bring the buses in. And the equipment, I know there's people weighing in, so
yeah, I was just about to say, so we'll take
stop for a minute.
Yeah, head back over to
the chat list.
Yeah, come back over from the chat list.
Okay.
Rose is asking, just for clarification, how many years are left for the lease?
So this year is year 2, next year is year 3, and then you have a lease payment for year 4. Something that we will discuss later, we don't have, is whether at the end of this school year, we create a reserve account. They are recommending districts do a reserve account that you could possibly put some of your savings from the school closure. And, you might say, well, whatever we put in that reserve account would go to pay off some of this lease payments to help you in the following year of the payment. So next year, if you do what we're saying, which is do year 3 for the iPads for the students now, you only have one lease payment for next year, which is the teachers' laptops. And then the following year, you'll have the 2 payments again.
Okay.
But you may decide you want to pay off sooner than that.
Okay. And Pam is asking, what about, I'm going to add, I think this question is in regards to if we half the iPads so that we don't lease, but we do, I think this is reduce the amount of iPads we have in each classroom, is one of the options instead of it being sort of I think an all or nothing. If we reduce the amount of iPads that we have, she's asking about return on investments with iPads. And then did Apple ever pay us to start the one-to-one program initially? And then Rose would like to add to the conversation. So ladies, I was going to say, if you want to pop your mics back on, you can add to the conversation.
So
I'll let Pam start because mine is kind of unrelated to the iPads.
Yep, go ahead.
So I see PM's okay. So what you would have to do is they would tell us how many iPads could go on the resale. So they would decide, I mean, as you can imagine, worldwide, these are hot commodities right now. Every school district is buying a technology. So if you want to sell the iPads that you have paid to, you would take those funds and put them towards the lease payment. You can pay the lease payment. So, I'm not sure why you would look at reducing. We're not one-to-one in the elementary. We're 1 iPad to 2 students. This is a perfect example with the school closure. We are right now deploying iPads to families without resources at our elementary level. And so return on investment, we believe there is a strong return on investment with these devices. This is what schools have. This is 21st century learning. And so, but if you decide you want to sell them to pay your lease payment,
As far as return on investment, I'm also looking at have our math scores and English scores, have those gone up since we've initiated this iPad program?
We've seen a strong growth from fall to spring, and in our achievement. Is it used in the way to make sure, I think you could say without them, where would we be? And we didn't do a study with a control group to say schools that didn't have them and schools that did have them. But I would say teachers have found them as an effective tool for differentiation. So it could be a further conversation. You'll have to decide what you do when the lease payments are up in 4 years, or you can decide to reduce them. So, yeah.
Okay. Rose, you wanted to add to the conversation?
Yeah, can you just scroll up, please, on the spreadsheet to where you made the changes that we did last time? So where it says pay the Mlti buyout in FY20, and then it says $53,328 in lieu of reducing building budgets by 5%. If we can gain that 53,000 from somewhere, such as that, and I know that it might be unpopular, but by still reducing the budget, about having used that as salary, is that something that we can do? Because that's almost 2 ed tech salaries.
So here's the challenge. is the $71,000. So see the 71,000
Yep.
for remove equipment? That came from their building budgets. So what our feeling is when you take the $71,000 out, and you buy all that, to ask principals to find $5,000, 5% of their budget, it's going to be difficult because these are the items they would reduce, are the things we're purchasing. So so if you look at the reductions, you can see at every school is where the reductions are. Walton has a $4,000 reduction because of what they had in their building for equipment. So that's why if you can't do the 71,000 and
No, I'm not saying the 71,000. I was saying the 53,000.
Right, but the 53,000 makes up for the 5% of the building.
Okay.
So the 71,000 really is the 53,000 of the building budgets. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I guess maybe I'd like to hear from other school committee members to see what their perspective is on this.
Rose, could I address your question too, real quick,
Yeah.
just to let you know? So as I was getting into this, it was becoming clear to me we would have had to really wipe out the supply lines and things in the school budgets, and it was clear to me that it wasn't feasible, to essentially say, well, there's no supply budget next year. We're just going to buy everything you could possibly think of now.
That's absolutely impossible. I understand
right.
that.
And so I talked to Katie, and it was becoming clear to me that it wasn't going to be a feasible thing to ask them to do. And so in discussing with Peter that we could do the MLTI buyout early, which is a one-time cost, we felt that was the solution to reach the number we needed to get to without doing something that was seeming to be very, very difficult, if not impossible.
Taking from one pot and then refilling that pot with money from next year's budget, using this money from this year's budget and then next year's budget refill, right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I'm really on the opinion that we need to figure out a way to get at least a couple of these positions back into the budget. And I don't know if that's trying to work with City Council. As far as I know that they have told us 1%. And I really hope that we can have a conversation about that, because getting these extra ed tech positions and interventionist positions are something that's really important to our students in our community. And I think that the community needs to understand this. It needs to understand why we're asking for the above and beyond.
So if I move on to the next part of this, which is the insurance adjustment. So we can come back to this. So don't
Yep, okay. And I'm more just this is something that I've stewed over since the last meeting. So I just want to, food for thought, I guess.
No, that's part of your job, is to ask the questions, process. I get it. So we had our insurance come in today at 1.85%. So we had budgeted at 6%. So the adjustment would be $242,000. We did have some salary adjustments we had to make because of teachers finishing their degree. So we reduced that adjustment from 242 to 236,000. So we have $236,000 adjustment. And Adam and I talked about there are different options we could do with this adjustment. And so this is for
Katie,
you all.
I think what people want to hear, it's an adjustment in our favor. So it's $236,000 that we didn't have access to 2 weeks ago, or is that correct?
I try not to say that it's something we had.
Right.
Okay.
No, I see what
Right.
we budgeted for, but we didn't need to budget.
Correct. So we're making a budget adjustment.
Yeah.
And you have to decide, how do we adjust the budget based on this information? Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So we put down 4 options. You could do a whole different option that we might not have thought of. So the first option, so as we take you through, before the health adjustment, our total budget was 46 million approximately. Our local 18.8 million. And the mill rate would be increased at 48 cents. So you can see we had for the local, so that next number you see total increase, that's the local. All right. I mean, the local is the total in the second bar. So that's at 48 cents, which is our total budget's up 3%, 3.1%, and our mill rate and our total local is up 5.25%. Right. So I just want everyone to be able to follow. Option 1 is we would take that adjustment and put it towards the local to reduce the local. So the local would go from being 5.25% to 3.93%. And that would be a 36 cents impact on the taxes. If the adjustment went to the local. Option 2 is we take $100,000 of the adjustment and we put it towards fund balance. And then the rest towards reducing the local. And that's the impact it would have. It would put local at 18.7 million or a 4.49% increase with a 41 cent impact on the mill rate. You could put back the tech coach, the technology coach, because that's the one teaching position that was reduced, that is current. So to maintain current would be to put that tech coach back in and then put the rest towards the local. So that would have a 4.3% increase on the local or 39 cents. You could do a hybrid, which is do the tech coach and reduce your fund balance and do something towards the local. And that would put us at 4.49% local and 41 cent to the mill. So the option 4 takes $100,000 of the fund balance in option 4.
Okay.
And the 66,000 of the tech coach, and then the rest towards the local, which is about 30 something.
So Katie, actually the option 4, the way I did it.
Yeah. How'd you break it out?
I broke it out, the tech coach for the 66,000 and then 34,000 off the fund balance and keeping the 136,000 on the local.
Okay.
But you're right in that could be option 5.
Right.
Tech coach, 100,000 to fund balance, rest, there's multiple any number of ways you could slice it.
Yeah.
So I was going to maybe suggest an option 5, which was the tech coach, no money to the fund balance, no money to the local, and to see how many tech positions we could get out of that dollar amount.
So what you're saying is put all the money towards positions.
Yes. Mm-hmm. To seeing what we can get for our dollar value out of that.
So that would stay with the top one, correct, Adam? That would be the current budget.
Yeah, he's shaking his head. Yes.
That's correct. It would keep the budget exactly the way it was last time we saw it.
Okay, and that's the 5.25% increase?
Yes.
The one in the yellow.
Okay.
Pam's asking, how much of the savings from COVID-19 that I sent you are we able to put in the fund budget?
You can't put any of it in the fund budget.
What I did was look for things that could be purchased now rather than next year.
Oh, okay.
And that was where we ran into, we took all the equipment and realized we were going to have a hard time getting to the number because, a lot of it is supplies. You don't want to just have no supply budget next year. So that was where we decided we would have to do the MLTI buyout and the iPad lease payment to get where we needed to be. So most of the savings, Pam, that we're going to see this year are not things we could reduce out of next year's budget. They're things that will roll into fund balance.
That's what I meant. I didn't mean fund budget. I meant fund balance.
Yeah, and I don't have I haven't tried to project that out yet. I'll certainly be doing that over the next month or so and try to keep you all updated as to what that looks like. And as Katie said, one thing that's being discussed out there is establishing reserve funds, which is something that's hard to do. So this might be a chance for the school committee to look at something like that.
Are we also getting, because I've been reading the stuff we've been getting from MSMA, how we're getting money to feed the kids and the state is giving us money. Are we, the money that we're getting from that, how is that kind of coming into this issue of the budget?
Do you want to speak to that, Adam, or you want me to?
Yeah. As far as any additional subsidy, we have not heard anything about whether we'll be receiving any additional. In terms of any feeding money, that would just be to offset feeding costs, which live outside of the general fund in the nutrition budget. So that wouldn't have any impact on the general fund budget. But if and when we hear of any additional subsidy, we'll certainly let you know as soon as we get that information.
Okay, thank you.
I suggest that what people are writing in the chat box needs to be said verbally, because remember, the public is not seeing what's in the chat box.
Yeah. I was just waiting for a moment for that.
Oh, no, I'm just.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I think, I think people are just different things. Dave Simpson is favoring option 4 with adding the tech coach back in, fund balance and local, as well as Brian Belknap thinks that a portion needs to go back to the local to try and limit the burden. Brian Carrier's leaning towards option 1. Let me know if I missed anything.
Rose.
I agreed with Brian Belknap, Karen.
Okay. Yeah, I saw agreed, and I was sort of trying to figure out what the agreed.
No, I understand. It's easy in a chat box, but
thank you for clarification on that one.
welcome.
So Dave, you kind of like the option 4 because it does what Brian said, which is give some to the local, or would
Correct,
you?
yes.
Yeah.
I agree with that, yes.
I personally am looking to do anything that is helping with local reduction. I think that is practicing, and I've used this term before, but some fiduciary responsibility on our end. So option 2 to me to put towards the fund balance really is to me not really an option that I'm really looking for. I'm looking for something that supports the local, and I guess I'm thinking of more of a hybrid, like 1 or 2 interventionist positions, and then something that supports the local is really what I'm looking at.
Yeah, I would like to see us putting more interventionists in there if we could find it in the budget to do that, and also the local, because especially with the whole COVID-19 now, the economy in this city is going to be hit, and people are already suffering.
Well, and I'm also thinking, as phenomenal of a job as I know that teachers are doing, and absolutely bending over backwards, and I commend them for that. I know that those of us in the education field are looking towards next year and already thinking about what does the next grade level look like. And so for that reason, I would definitely support putting some interventionists in, as well as, like Pam said, piggybacking and supporting the local. So, if it's 1 interventionist we can put in, 2 interventionists we can put in, and then put the rest towards the local, then sort of the way that I know Brian Carrier's leaning towards option 1, which is, put
it back to the local.
Put it back to the local. Yeah.
We'll have more projections next Monday night on what that the city's actually going to be looking at, possibly for revenues. I think that we're still early on in this.
Mm-hmm.
We've already seen the collapse of some businesses in here,
Yeah.
and long-standing businesses, not a pop-up or anything like that, long-standing businesses.
All right.
And we still have months to go on this. So from a financial responsibility, anything that we can do to lower the local share and try to ease some of the burden on this, I think is what we need to be looking at.
Yep. Yep. Faith, can I call on you? You would like to see a combo of interventionist and putting towards the local as well?
Yeah, I think it's important to put towards the local, but I think we've heard from schools that they need interventionists. And I am very concerned about, I have 3 kids that I'm trying to homeschool and do my job, and I'm doing the best I can, but it's difficult. And I fear that kids are going to come back to school whether it's in May or next year. And, they're going to need some extra support, and the teachers, which means the teachers are going to need some more support.
Yep. So that's sort of the lines that I was thinking, local
exactly.
and interventionist. Okay.
Exactly. I'd like to see a combination of that.
Okay. Dan, how about for you, Dan Poisson? What are you thinking?
Wait, Dan, you're still muted.
There we go. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dan, what are your thoughts around this?
I'm in favor of option 1, maybe option 2, but I'm kind of on the same line as Brian Carrier. Just I think it's going to devastate it already has, city of Auburn. So I think that's the most responsible thing to do.
Okay. Put as much back towards the local as we can.
Yeah. Because I think they're not going to pass it if we don't. I think it's going to.
And I think another concern, not to jump in, Dan, I apologize, is that this economy is potentially only going to get much, much worse.
Yeah.
As these days, there's no one inside of this. They say what I heard today, the tip of the iceberg might be a month away, which is, terrifying as a member of a family, let alone a member of a community. So, and I don't want to take away anything, but I think this number, if we start moving the number up, it's going to get pushed back anyway. That's just, I guess that's my fear.
Well, and there are if things, and my lips to God's ears, if things get better, we can always ask for supplemental afterwards. If the things get much better, but at the way that they're looking right now, that's not going to transpire. And I think that we should prepare for the worst and hope for the best.
So if you were going to put one position in, you would have to look at option 3.
That's the one I'd probably lean to the most, Katie.
Totally agree.
I think putting the position back in that is an existing position and then putting the rest towards local makes the most sense.
Yeah. It's not extra. It's not new. It's existing. I agree with you, Brian.
And that still gets us from 0.48 to 0.39, which is still a substantial.
Which is a reduction.
Which is still a reduction, and it's still keeping our promise to City Council, which was keep with the existing personnel, keep with just the adjustments to that. I think option 3 would be the one that I would lean towards.
Okay, so this is non-binding, but Katie, I think it would be good sort of information to hear. I'm going to call on each because everyone's had a chance to sort of tie in, but I think this would be helpful for the conversation was helpful just to sort of hear where everyone was coming from. So just weigh in one last time if one of your options is 1 through 4, or if it's a hybrid, so that Katie can kind of collect information around what she's seeing. So Rose, I'm going to start with you. What would your preference be, Rose?
I would do an option 5 where I would do 2 interventionist positions, but maybe even 3, not add any to the fund balance and reduce the local. I think what's going to happen, like Faith said, that students are going to come back and there might not necessarily have the support that some of us can provide. And there's going to be additional need for that interventionist. So I think that that's something that should be taken into consideration.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Pam, what are you thinking?
I agree with Rose. I'm kind of torn because I don't want to get rid of any position, but I'm thinking if the tech coach position, if Katie, you feel that that is one that can be cut without hurting anybody, I feel like maybe if we took that and added 2 interventionists for the same price, then we can get our 2 interventionists and we can keep the local down. I definitely think unfortunately, this COVID-19 chaos has really tied our hands, and to ask the public for more when they're already bleeding is, it's hard. I mean, everybody needs more, but it's hard to ask for more in this situation.
Okay. Brian Belknap.
Just to clarify that, one intervention, like you said, if you did option 3 and made it an interventionist rather than a tech coach, you're still talking about 66,000. I think it's 66.5, Adam.
Yeah, it's right around 66.5.
So 66.5, right? You would have to do Ed Tech 3s, and they're not the most qualified to do interventions, but they could do an intervention, yes. I'm just saying that 2 interventionists.
Well, those were the positions you put in there for Ed Techs, right? When initially in the initial budget, you had added Ed Tech positions, right?
The 2 Ed Tech 3 positions were to help with behaviors. Not to help for academics. Sorry.
Oh, I think Pam froze for a sec. Okay. We'll come back to Pam if she wants to come back. Brian Belknap, how about for you? You are still
I'm in favor of.
You guys are all frozen on me.
Yeah, option 3.
Yeah, I'm in favor of some sort of option 3, yes, whether it's the tech coach, whether it's interventionist, and then putting the rest to the local, absolutely.
Okay. Dan, Poisson, same thoughts as before?
Yeah, option 1. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Brian Carrier, Faith?
Yeah, I think option 3 is my best bet.
Okay.
With positioning, keeping local, and we'll just pray that our fund balance continues to maintain.
Yep. Okay. Dave Simpson, still option 3?
Option 3 with the tech coach, yes.
Yep. Okay. Am I missing Brian Carrier?
Still on option 1.
Okay. Katie, I think you've gotten your information as far as, what...
I have to send something to to city council tomorrow. It sounds like we can do option 3. Why don't we just say an instructional position, and then decide later if you want to make it the tech coach position or you want to make it an intervention position.
Okay.
Because it's one position. Okay. Or you do 2 Ed Tech 3s for that position.
Okay.
Katie, did you let that staff know that position was in jeopardy?
Yes. Yep. The staff member has been, we've talked with her about possibility of some positions that are open, and was she interested?
Would she qualify for whatever position ends up if we go with option 3?
Yeah, she could be an interventionist. Yeah.
Can we agree that if we get option 3, that position goes to that staff member?
If she wants it.
If she wants it, yes.
Right. Yeah, right. I mean, she would have an option of the interventionist. We have some gifted and talented positions of which she has experience in. Yeah. So yes.
For some reason, that's important to me.
That's okay.
Thank you.
It's someone's job, Dave. It's someone's job. It's important to all of us for sure. Okay. Do you feel? Katie,
absolutely.
Do you feel like you have some direction to go towards city council with at this point? That we are in favor of putting some of this towards the local, but we would like to.
Yes, Adam. Sorry, Karen.
Oh, sorry.
Don't mean to cut you off. Adam can make option 3 adjustment to this paper. Whoops. So Adam will take our revenue and put option 3 into it, and that will go to the city council packet tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep. Hopefully that's consensus from everyone. If not, quickly chime in. Okay, nothing in the chat. No one's opened up. All right, Katie, I think we're good on that one.
Okay, great. So the next part, and good, I see Shelley's in. That's good. So the next part is the COVID-19 update. I want to start with, and I have a lot here, and I want Scott to have an opportunity to share what, especially around the seniors, and also Shelley to share what she's been doing for the past 3 days. But just so you know, with the governor's order that took place yesterday, it really doesn't change a lot of what we're doing because we're still considered essential workers. There's still an expectation that we provide opportunities for learning, that we're connecting with our students, that we're still doing feeding for our children. So it doesn't change a whole lot of what we're doing. It does extend our school closure another week. So we will be updating some information. I'm going to do a robocall at some point tomorrow, just to update things for families. Remember when I first brought the plan and I said, here's our plan for our 2-week closure, anticipating we'd probably go beyond that. And so those first 2 weeks, we didn't do special ed to the same degree that we had, would be doing. And we were allowed to do that as we really thought through how to do the special ed FAPE, which is that free and appropriate education for those students. And so those days will be waived. Starting Monday, this past Monday, and I sent you communications that were going on, we are counting these as student days starting Monday because we are providing FAPE to our students. Ryan Fairchild and Laura Shaw worked hard with their staff last week. They had many Zoom meetings. There were letters sent to special ed families, information shared with teachers that were asking them to look at the students' IEP goals and look at how can they best deliver those in creative ways, in ways that meet students' needs and families' stress levels. Mark Stubbs is every morning he does the Edward Little High School EDD program, and every morning he's doing a morning meeting where he does taking deep breaths with his students and doing calendar. So our special ed teachers are really thinking outside the box on how to best meet their student needs. We have another special ed teacher who, and all of them are doing outstanding, is really calling families every week. She spent 20 minutes with a family, really making those connections with parents. Some of these parents just need someone to talk to. Just, here's what's going on. Can you help me? And that's what we really are. We're that community connection for folks. And that's continuing in this next phase. What we are going to do, and Shelley's going to talk about it, and Scott is going to talk about it, is really being intentional about this next phase, really working on being work smarter, not harder. Teachers are doing a lot of things in isolation because that's who they are. They're committed. And we're working, which you're going to see from Shelley, on a website for teachers so that I don't need to be thinking of what to do next. I can learn from my colleagues. So that's continuing. The high school and middle school, which Scott will talk more about, is talking about how do we capture the COVID-19 semester and the trimester. This will go down in history. As we all know, we're living history right now. Internationally, worldwide, this is COVID-19 semester. High schools, colleges, CM, everybody recognizes this is an unusual semester. But what we want to do is show our families that what we're giving out is important. And we want to start showing kids, here's what we're asking of you. We want you to participate and connect. And we're looking at how do we honor the work students are doing by passing them for the semester. Notice I didn't say giving you a grade for the semester, but passing you for the semester in order to give you credit. And I know Scott will get into that more. Other things I want to tell you that are happening is we are having, because of the special ed change, we are required to pay the tuition for our students in out-of-district placements. This is to keep those programs in business because we're going to need them. So we are being asked to, even if they're running a 2-hour program, that we pay the daily rate. And for the students, so Laura, who's our out of district person, she's working with those folks on identifying those students who regularly attend and paying those tuitions. So that's a big change for us. We're serving 750 lunches daily, lunch and breakfast. So 750 children are being serviced each day. We do plan to have April vacation. We all need to unplug for 4 days, and plus it's a holiday, so 5 days. We need to unplug. The students need to unplug. So we are holding to April vacation, that this is a time to just kind of take a deep breath, get outside, do something besides sit in front of a screen.
And Katie, speaking to that too, I think our kitchen service people who have been working diligently to provide meals in such a way that is 10 times harder than providing breakfast and lunches in our typical cafeterias. It is so much more demanding. They need a break too. Absolutely.
Well, Karen, we're serving meals over April vacation.
Oh, that's right. Oh, that's
your RSU4 is not. But
we are not. That's why it was whoops, wrong district. Wrong district, sorry.
Our food service people want to serve in April.
Okay.
They're committed to doing it.
Good.
They're working out a schedule so that we believe we're probably served. Right now, we've shifted to Monday, Wednesday, Fridays.
Mm-hmm.
We give 2 meals out on Monday, 2 meals out on Wednesday, and 2 meals out on Friday. And that's been going well this week. What we're looking at is possibly 2 days over April vacation. And this will allow us to who can have time off and who can be in, but they really want to stay committed to it. And we believe the state is putting in a waiver allowing us to do that. We're doing some really creative ways. Chris Piercy and Paula Roulard with the staff has been incredible. We have Ed Tech stepping in to help support. We have Auburn Middle School, Edward Little High School, doing a lot of meal prep for our satellite areas, and Sherwood Heights, Walton also prepping in their kitchens, in Fairview. So it's really been a great team effort, and we're going strong in that. So we are continuing. We have tightened up that we don't want kids on the fields, the basketball courts, the tennis courts, the playgrounds. Matter of fact, we heard there were students checking out at Fairview. They knew they couldn't get on certain places, so now they're going to Fairview, and that is being addressed to encourage our students practice social distancing. That's the only way we're going to get through it, is doing what we're told to do. Mm-hmm. So those are the highlights, and then I'm going to turn it to Shelley. Can you do an update on what you're doing? Then we'll go to Scott.
Sure. Katie, I do see that Rose has a question about the meals. Do you want her to ask that now before I start?
I would. Yes, please. While go ahead, Rose.
You're muted, Rose.
Sorry, I thought I were. No, so I just wanted to touch upon, I think what Pam might have mentioned earlier was that we received a memo from MSBA that said that there was a program called Full Plates. And I just wanted to make sure that we were going to put in an application for that, because that might be, I don't know how that works. I don't know anything about it, but if that can still get kids foods, and because it's, I believe, all shelf stable, then it's something that we can do at once and people can still get their break.
So yes, we've already received one round of the grant funds, and we will be applying for another round. So yes, we're already collecting on that. That money can be used for substitute for needs that we have in the food service program. And yes, Chris Piercy and Paula have already been applying for those funds.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And thank you again to everybody that's putting all the work into feeding these kids. So thank you.
Okay, Shelley.
Sure. So I'm just going to share my screen and show you a slide that kind of summarizes some of what Katie just said. If I can get to the right place.
And the reason I'm talking fast is because I'm watching the clock.
And I will do the same. So as Katie said, we well, it's hard to believe we're 2.5 weeks into this because I feel like we're about 8 weeks into this. Everybody's been working so hard. So originally we sort of planned for short-term closure. And so our focus in those first couple of weeks was to have staff connect with students and provide resources. And so that's what went home in those initial elementary packets. At middle school and high school, a lot was shared through Google Classroom because the students are one-to-one. And so then as we sort of got toward the end of last week, we started conversation about, now that we know our closure is longer, what does that mean for our focus? And so we've been talking to our staff about keeping the connection part because we're hearing how critical that is for families and for students and for teachers, quite frankly, who are missing their students terribly. But also to move toward, instead of just providing resources, really working to get students to engage in learning activities at home. Because we all know that there are some home situations where that's prioritized and there's a structure and there's a quiet place and there's somebody supporting students. And there are other situations where that isn't the case. And so you have to kind of balance between acknowledging that people are in stressful situations and trying to maybe work from home and support their children, or even trying to figure out what to do about childcare. So we are trying to strike the balance between just providing resources and really expecting students to be on a strict learning schedule from home. So the goal now as Teachers Connect is to really find out why certain families might not be engaging and to work with students specifically on some targeted content areas. Scott will talk more about secondary, but what I've done over the last 2 days is to hold a Zoom meeting, 4 yesterday and 3 today, so that I could meet with every grade level K6. And what we did in those meetings was I started by letting everybody share what was going well for them, maybe what they were struggling with. We talked about them really putting their intense efforts into ELA and math in K6, knowing that we would provide additional materials for students to engage in science and social studies, but making it so that we all have the same focus, math and ELA, as our core work. And just kind of reminding them that they need to breathe. I heard somebody else say that. And that we can learn from each other and support each other and not all have to be doing the same identical work individually. And also just to have them remember our learning expectations when they're selecting activities for their students so that we're not doing things that are disconnected from our curriculum. So those were the meetings we had today. And the other thing we rolled out to them was, let me stop this for a second. Go back here, I'm going to switch. Let's see.
Shelley, while you're switching,
Yes.
A couple of questions popped up. One of them from Rose asking if the plan that you're talking about can be adjusted for the closure if needed until the end of the school year. And then Pam is asking about Wi-Fi and access for Wi-Fi and maybe putting it, I know we've opened it up in some of our buildings so that people can access it from the parking lots, but potentially using buses to provide Wi-Fi as well.
Yeah, well, we have not talked about buses that I know of. Katie, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
No.
But I do know that we've looked into hotspots, correct?
Mm-hmm. Right. We would have to purchase hotspots for buses. What we're collecting right now is where are those areas that don't have the internet access. So that's what we talked about this week, is gathering more information around that. We did talk to Verizon, who's our carrier, around hotspots, and they're quite expensive. So we're still doing some research. All of our buildings now, I think, all of our buildings now have access to internet outside. Dave Strome's been working hard with our communications provider and doing that. And that, I think, is going to be advertised through Facebook and so forth, letting folks know it is out in all of our buildings now.
Okay, thank you.
And I would say that in conversations with all of the grade levels, it's really clear to me that teachers are being very conscientious about making sure that they're not assuming students can access materials through technology, because I heard lots of things that came up, like I've heard from other curriculum leaders about students who had access to technology, and now their families are losing their internet access because they're cutting corners and maybe not having the room in their budget for that. I heard from our teachers about places where there's a device, but there are multiple students and they're sharing the device, or they're sharing bandwidth, so if your parent's home working and you're working and your bandwidth doesn't support everybody being online at once, I think our teachers are really, really doing a lot to make sure they're meeting the needs, regardless of whether technology is a solid thing in that household or not. We had staff today ask if our tech people could support parents with technology. Peter said, absolutely. There's a process to request help. So that's on everybody's radar. And in response to your question, Rose, absolutely. When we did this, thinking about our plan, it really was, we hope to be back in May, and knowing that that might not be feasible, so that it actually wouldn't need further adjustment. I don't think. I think it's pretty solid the way it is. So the other thing I wanted to show you just very quickly is work that Val has been doing, Val Ackley, who works with me in my office part-time. So she has been putting together, she's building out one place. What we heard from teachers and actually the coaches, when the coaches met to talk, was that they felt like there needed to be a central hub for teachers where they could access everything to kind of promote sharing. So Val has been working on this for us, and it will be live hopefully by the end of the week. And so there'll be a section by grade span. There are resources about COVID-19 for teachers, but also to share with families. There's a section on self-care and a section where teachers can access the professional development that's available to them during this time. And that's it for me, I think, Katie.
Yep. So Scott's going to jump in and talk about seniors. What is the percentage do not have internet access? A survey was conducted year prior to shut. Yeah. So Scott, you could talk about that as well.
The first part, percentage-wise, it's about maybe 2% of the respondents that we had back. We had right around 82% completed the survey, with 40 students saying that they didn't have internet access. If I was sitting in my office, I have all that percentage data right in front of me, but I'm not. But yes, so we had about 82% complete the survey, with about 40 saying that they didn't. And through those initial phase one, with teachers reaching out to students, that was, we made sure that teachers knew these are the students that have already identified that have said they don't have internet access, so that teachers could be communicating with them and coming up with alternative plans that may not necessarily require internet access. So let's see. Well, first, let me preface by saying we have had many meetings. We had 2 meetings with area principals last week. And by area principals, I'm talking about our cohort that filters into LRTC. So there's 6 of us. We had 2 meetings last week because the week prior, we were all just texting each other back and forth and said, why don't we find an opportunity for us all to get together and do a Zoom meeting? So that was, so we've been doing that pretty regularly. And also last week we had 2 follow-up, and Shelley, you tell me the name of but it's the Western Maine cohort. So there's quite a few schools that were involved in that. But so we had really spent a lot of time talking, and we developed some tenets that we wanted to make sure that we honored through the process. And the first one, we tried to stick to was student safety, food security, community safety, and learning was 4th on the list. We really held to student safety and food security, and then community safety as the 3 priorities that we needed to keep in mind. And then through our decision-making process we all came to the table with the same questions. What are we going to do with our seniors? And what are we going to do with this semester for earning credits? And without question, every one of us had said, our filter is going to be do no harm. And that's really the mindset that we all had. And we've been sharing documents and working documents and materials back and forth, whether they be community letters, student letters, all of those things. And our mindset has consistently been do no harm. And then seeing some of the questions that came before are, is this a plan that could continue? We worked hard at making sure that we were having the discussion of a plan A and a plan B. And within each one of those, the difference being plan A, if we do return, and plan B, if we don't ever return. And within those, what do we do for grades 9 through 11? And what do we do with seniors in both of those scenarios? And even through those discussions, if we did return, we would really have to, and that's where we didn't want to get too far down, but if we did return, then we would need to come together and start talking and sharing ideas of what would be good practice, because school would not pick up where it left off if we were to return. And so at this point, if we were to return on May 4th, we'd really have to re-examine how we deliver. We wouldn't just be walking in on the first day back in a maroon period number 1 and pick right back up. So that was even farther down the road's discussion. Tomorrow, I'm meeting with that group again in the morning. We're going to do another Zoom meeting. But let me see if I can pull off this share screen, because I met with our department heads on Monday. I had emailed them Thursday or Friday the week before to try to lay out some thoughts that we were having, to try to get them to have the opportunity to talk it through with their department members, give them time to process emotionally and logistically of what was happening. And so we did, and then we came together on Monday morning. So let's see if I can share the screen, because some of this is, I really would like to hear some of your input, because we need to frame some decisions about what do we do with our seniors.
Well, and while you're sharing that, Scott, I think seniors, but I also think juniors. Juniors is a critical year as well, as far as starting to think about your transcript, and if you are on track for, applying for colleges, and in particular, some really competitive colleges who are really going to be looking at GPAs and pass fails. I'm really worried about pass fails and how that would impact a GPA. And I know we're all part of this. Everyone nationwide is part of a COVID-wide trimester this year, but I think it's really important to, like you have said, do no harm. A pass-fail could potentially harm if we're looking to really get into a competitive school with a grade shoot, and you need your GPA to support that.
Yep. And those are all important things to consider and keep in mind as we're walking ourselves through this. We spent a lot of time doing research and examining some of the other states that have closed and some of the directions that they've done, some of the schools in our area, post-secondary schools in our area, post-secondary schools throughout. One little tidbit that I can share that we gathered up yesterday, Harvard and Yale, Columbia, MIT are all moving into pass-fail for the semester. One of the most important aspects of all this is really to be sure that there's equity for all students to be able to access education and access learning. And it's all ajar. This is unprecedented time, and it's all ajar right now. And every institution is feeling it, whether it's a K-3 school, a high school, or a post-secondary school. So the COVID-19 is being impacted in every educational institution that we have in the country. And so everything that we've read and talked about and reached out to, everyone is fully expecting and anticipating that things are going to be different. And we can't go in with the mindset of having the same expectations of what's going to be on a transcript than what we have typically had. Life totally changed on March 13th for everybody in the state of Maine, and it has happened nationwide even prior to that. So, these large post-secondary schools are facing that as well, and are fully expecting that they are going to have to look at transcripts differently and really look at the overall package of a student when they're applying to school, and look at them from a very individual standpoint. And their filters are really going to have to be more focused on the individual student and not on some of their typical filters of GPA or SAT scores. And that is everywhere. I have had a lot of conversations with colleagues, not just with our 6 cohorts, but looking around the state, as well as trying to examine many of these post-secondary schools to see where they are falling. And consistently, they are saying that the GPA and what it's going to indicate on the transcript for this semester themselves are in the same part of trying to navigate all of this.
Okay.
So what we have kind of developed, and I'm not good at this screen sharing. So
Scott, down below is a green box.
Yep.
Click on that.
Yep.
And now you can see your documents.
Nope.
When you can't.
Nope.
Are they up?
Yeah.
Okay. And you click the share screen.
Yes.
And you said share.
I'm trying to share. I want to share.
On the right. On the right.
On the right?
When you hit share, does anything happen?
Yeah, it gives me
click on it.
Top one, whiteboard.
Okay, click on the document. It's kind of funky looking. Okay, now we see your screen.
Can you see it now?
Yay, you did
there it is.
Woo!
All right. So we talked about a continuous learning plan to provide learning to meet the critical essential outcomes for a course, and to build a plan from April 6th through May 1st, because that's when the governor had established that we could come back. And we would adapt a pass-fail model for this semester, and it would be more of a pass-incomplete. Teachers would establish the critical essential outcomes for a course, the criteria for meeting these outcomes to earn a P, a mindset of really what is the bare minimum that the student, that they're comfortable with for in the course, and for what a student would need to earn to get that credit. And then we started toying with some ideas of what could a weekly schedule look like to kind of establish something for expectations for students. Monday and Wednesday would be maroon days, Tuesday and Thursday white days, and Friday would be catch-up conference hours, office hours with students. And now we'd be looking at 30 minutes of learning and engagement per course. If you were on a Monday and you had 4 classes, it would be 30 minutes each. So it'd be about 2 hours out of the day. And the term that comes to mind that is all over the place is, let me see if I can, asynchronous, so that education wouldn't happen we wouldn't all be sitting here like we are right now. They would have the opportunity to be here right now, but they would be able to access it throughout the day. And then we would be talking about having opportunities for them to be engaged with work for 30 minutes. And that could mean a Zoom meeting, that could be being involved with a Google Classroom, or that could be 30 minutes of reading and reflection during that. It takes the form of what the teacher establishes for that 30 minutes. Where did that come from? That's come from a couple of Department of Educations through the country. One of the first ones I started with was Kansas, because they were one of the first to shut down the schools for the rest of the year. And that was some advice that they had provided. We're not married to that in any shape or form, but it seemed like a good measuring stick for what to expect. One of the assistant principals, Eric Gray, we've been working on this. We developed a framework for teachers and departments to guide them in the work to establish the critical essential outcomes and the criteria for a passing. Just to kind of frame that out, so to have them things that they should consider. What are the skeletons of the class that they need to be looking at? And there's no way that we can replicate what typically happens within a class through remote learning, whether that is mailed packets, picked up packets, whether that's doing projects, whether that's doing Zoom. We cannot replicate that in any shape or form. And the equity that goes into all of this for access for our students is pretty significant, because we have kids that are all over the place that have a variety of needs that are going on, social, emotional, physical, safety issues, all of those things come into play. And so that's where that's been a lot of our thinking. And so when you ask why are we doing a P and not something else, it's not based on what we're seeing. It's not putting a student at an advantage or a disadvantage with that, because every educational institution is faced with this, and we're gonna have to demonstrate through our profile page what that indicated and how we reach that when guidance counselors are working with students to send out their packages for post-secondary. The next piece, see if I can get there. Right now, what are we going to do with our seniors? So right now for our seniors, we have 16 to 17 credits that we have as EL graduation requirements. We have 24 that we say that as a total that they have to have. We have 16 that we say this is the floor, this is the criteria that we've established. 4 credits of English. We were talking about waiving the other communication credit. 3 credits of math, 3 credits of science, 3 credits of social studies, and we have had 2 whole credits of health and PE, 0.5 for health and the other 1.5 in a variety of ways, and then a 0.5 career prep. And so I wanted you to see that's what we as Auburn have said, this is our benchmark of the minimum. These are the courses that you have to take and pass. And then the other credits that go above and beyond are all of the electives. The state sets their floor at 4 years of English, social studies, and history. So that's 2 years of that, 2 years of math, and 2 years of science. And within those, they talk about like social studies, you need to have civics and American history. We have that as well. Science, you need to have 1 lab. We have that as well. And then a fine arts. And we have that as well, 1 whole credit of that. So where we've been playing around with is really talking about doing 16 credits and doing the 4 English, 3 math, 3 science, 3 social studies, and the fine art, and waiving the other half credit of health PE. And so what that would allow us to do is we would examine what's left for the needed courses for seniors right now and focus our efforts on supporting these students to complete the critical essential outcomes for earning a P for the required credits. So for the seniors, we just wanted to focus on those 16 credits that we said you need to pass, those 16 courses that you needed to pass for this year to finish off this semester. So a lot of our seniors are sitting in a position where all they need to do is finish their half credit of math and their half credit of senior English. And so that's what we're proposing to ask of that group, and waive the 24 credits and stick to the state, stick to our minimum threshold that we're talking about. And with that, I'm curious to hear what people's thoughts are.
So Dave Simpson popped down with a question, percentage of seniors on track to earn the minimum amount of credits.
Interestingly, when we started with working with our area principals and then with the Western Maine cohort, we talked about our greens, yellows, and reds. And so who would we put in the green category to coming out of first semester? And we had 85 to 90% of our seniors who we said, they're green. We feel very, very confident that they're going to make it just by doing the courses that they're enrolled in right now. 5 to 10%, we would qualify as the yellow, pass the classes, and they're going to need some level of intervention. And that's most likely probably some ELPM work, meaning recovering a credit from years past. And then the 1 to 5% that we were going to need intensive support. And a lot of times that's let's make a deal in that last week before graduation ceremonies. And sometimes those kids pass their class after the graduation ceremony. They wouldn't participate in graduation, but they still count to our completer rate for that year. That means that they finish their course criteria and get their credit later in the summer. Currently, right now, 43% of our seniors already have 24 credits, but they may not necessarily have the right credits. They just have accumulated so many. We have 68% that have 22 credits, 89% at 20 credits, and 93% at 19 credits. And that, when you think about if they were carrying 8 full classes right now, that would get them 4 credits. So that 93% is indicating that they're going to pass those classes, and then they're going to end up having some level of intervention to pick up that last credit. Does that help in terms of data? And the guidance counselors right now are, they all have spreadsheets. And so they're identifying how many of their kids have a required, to that 16 required classes, how many and who they are that need to fulfill. Typically, it's that last semester of English. Some of them have to finish off a math for a semester, or they have to finish off a science for a semester. And to kind of get a compilation of what that looks like. And so they are doing that as we speak. It's incomplete, so I don't want to share all of that, but they've been tracking them pretty heavily for the last 3 years anyway, coming out of their freshman year, and either putting in some intervention plans already or directing them to those intervention plans. And many times some of those kids are teenagers, and it's okay. They're going to wait till second semester of their senior year to finish off a hanging credit that they hadn't fulfilled earlier in their high school career. So anyway, they're compiling that to give us a better snapshot. But as I spoke with our area principals, that very much was the similar mindset. Let's see what we need to do to hit the minimum threshold of credits of those required classes, and then put all hands on deck and create the intensive support that students need to complete those, whether if they need support to finish 1/2 credit of senior English, or they have 2 or 3 or more. That's where we want to put, kind of like we want to put our eggs in that basket. We want to focus on those kiddos that need that in order. And that's our first tier of focus right now, is the seniors. And that goes without saying. All 6 of our schools that's their mindset right now, is how do we address those seniors? And we even, through the plan A, meaning if we were to return back to school, we would still utilize that time to stay focused on those criteria that they would need.
So, Scott, it almost sounds like it's and it sounds like this is what your goal is, what you're thinking. You're looking at each student individually, and then really making a plan for what that particular student needs in order to meet and in order to meet some graduation requirements. And so, from the school committee, are you looking for us to sort of weigh in on whether or not we are looking at EL graduation requirements or state graduation requirements?
I guess, yeah, I would like some, we can live with both. Some people are saying, why would you go above and beyond? Why wouldn't you stick to the minimum? And that's why I appreciate the question. We've been playing under the set of rules of the Edward Little requirements. And so my mind kind of comes back to that. That's what we've been working toward anyway. So it wouldn't be that major of a shift. And so to focus it, like Karen, you may only need to do 1 semester of senior English, and that should be your focus. I may need to do 1 semester of senior English and my other half semester that I still need to complete my 3 math. And so that should be my focus. And what that would allow, if that's all that the kid had to focus on, and then the teacher could focus on that, that would free them up to put their efforts into shifting into our grades 9 through 11.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think, Karen, to answer your question, is he's going to, they're going to come back. We can't, so because I know, April 15th, he'll have more answers as we continue to do it. And then it can go on the April 15th agenda for with the graduation policy and what needs to be, for a year or so. What do we do now to have our policy reflect what they're doing? Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
It does. It does to me. It's an unprecedented time of year. I don't think we can. Yeah.
Exactly. But we'll put it back on the agenda for the 15th.
And Rose is asking, would these classes still be pass-fail if we end up coming back?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Stick with the plan. I think, Scott, you spoke to that. Like even if we came back quickly on May 4th or whatever that return date is, we wouldn't be returning to a typical Maroon Day, period 1. Here we go. Okay.
We have some theories on what to do with that, but that's too far out. This is the immediate concern. Yeah. We've thrown around a few ideas, and I haven't even vetted them out yet. They're just
We're trying to figure out what the exit plan was and what distance learning looks like, and the reentry plan. I think it is best addressed when we're closer to. Or
it's like 8 on the list right now.
Yeah.
Scott, do you have any idea how many of the seniors have already met the state minimum requirement?
That's part of what I've asked the guidance counselors to put together.
Okay, I'd be curious to know what that would be, because that might guide decision making.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Great question, Dave.
That's why I started with, I've shared this with many of the staff already and said, build out of what the Auburn requirements are and then look at what the state requirements are.
Yeah.
So we could have a handle on what that would look like.
Thank you.
What I would want you to know is when we talk about GPAs would be frozen for everybody from the end of first semester, because we wouldn't be attaching a grade, we'd be attaching pass fail. And for the seniors, historically that already happens. So when we're assessing where their class rank is, it's not based on have any of their progress through second semester of their senior year. It's captured at the end of their first semester of their senior year. So that stays consistent, and we'd be holding the GPA for everybody 9 through 11 because the entire education system is on pause all the way across. But we could still take that GPA from what they've already accomplished and what they'll accomplish in the future, and that can still be calculated. This semester would just be accumulating credits, wouldn't influence the GPA at all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions for Scott at this time?
Yep.
No, but as you think of them, send them to us so that when Scott preps for the 15th, he knows what he's going to be needing to address.
And I just wanted to address one other piece. And again, we've spent a lot of time talking to many other schools and seeing what they're doing and what they're not doing. And I know that when we went into phase 1, we spent a lot of time saying, let's not be entering things into Power School, because that's calculating a grade. Mm-hmm. And from an equity standpoint, that's quite a challenge to be able to do as to why you got a 90 and you got a 76. There's too many variables that are going on in the here and now for that. But what we did talk about was utilizing Power School, because that's the tool that kids are used to, families are used to, the community is used to track work completion. So a teacher could enter in some of the pieces that they're saying are essential and some of the work that they're leading up to for that essential to say, so that you as a parent could be able to track along and say, yes, they've done it or they haven't done it. And there wouldn't be a score assigned to that. And that was to help with some transparency and to allow people to be both the parent and the student engaged in what's going on, so that when you do come back to your daughter or your son and say, did you do this today? I know that you had Maroon Day. You would have something to be able to prime that conversation. But we wouldn't do a score there because it's calculating. And the other piece that I really wanted to be sure that graduation, we're working on alternative plans. That sometimes that's our fun commercial break for the day, because it gets very exciting because we miss our kids. And, when kids ask me all the time, what's my favorite part of high school, graduation is. It's the culminating thing. We've seen kids for 4 years. So this is, we feel their pain because it's painful for us as well. But we were starting to talk about some different plans with the kiddos, possibly hold on the track field, the soccer and track venue, when it's safe for the community. That would interfere with some planned work on the field in the summer. So more to come on that. We've set up a Zoom meeting with the senior class officers and advisors and some members of guidance and some of the admin, and even one of the representatives that help support the diplomas that we purchase and the caps and gowns, to be part of a meeting on Monday to start saying what could be, if we're allowed as a community to gather in July, what's something that interests you? If we can't come back until August, what interests you? Do you have some other ideas of venue? There's conversation about a virtual graduation. And to me, that's a little heartbreaking, but we'll do what we got to do because we absolutely need to recognize these seniors and give them their pomp and circumstance that they deserve. But anyway, kids are way more creative than we are, and to kind of put that into play for them, to give them an opportunity to weigh in and say, because even if we were to talk about August, even if we got the clearance, some of these kids may be already heading off to school. And is that the right the right path that we want to take for graduation, and not have anybody excluded in that. So that's some of the thinking that it's ongoing. But I think when we look at the pass fail and the credits, we're trying to be the most forgiving and honest to each and every student, because we have to account for all of the students, try to be equitable to all of them, and recognize just what a monumental shift in education this has been for every institution nationwide.
Yeah. All right, great. Thank you so much, Scott, for sharing all of that. It's much appreciated. Just popping in the chat box for a second. Brian Belknap, definitely in favor of the Auburn requirements, although terrible time. It does hold them accountable for what was done the last 3 years as well, but also fair to help to get them over the hump by relaxing some things. Yep. And Faith Fontaine, Pam is in agreement with you, Brian. So yeah, we want to get all kids across that line. So what do we need to do to support them? I think is what they're both saying. So, all right. Thank you, Scott.
And if you have questions, please, I know some community members talk to you. I have talked to some other parents to try to walk them through some of what our thinking is. You just got to go in being comfortable saying we don't know at this time, but try to create a framework to give kids some expectations from now to the end of the school year. So please send them our way or reach out to us.
Okay, great. Thank you, Scott. Thank you so much.
I just want to say something. I think the Auburn School Department has done an amazing job with this whole chaos that we've been given. The fact that, from the beginning, we've set up remote learning and helped create a normalcy for these kids when this new reality and this new normal is frightening. So I just want to say that from the bottom of my heart that I thank every educator in the Auburn School Department, and the lunch people, the janitors, the bus people, everybody has done a remarkable job. You've really stepped up to the plate, and it's humbling at how amazing everybody has been. So I just wanted to say that, and I'm sorry it's part of this. But anyhow, I think it's amazing, and now I'm going to cry. So I'm just going to mute myself now.
Thanks, Pam. Thanks.
Pam, I just saw your question. I can talk about this forever, and I want to stop. But the questions in terms of like dual enrollment and AP, right from the beginning, we have communicated to the teachers to make sure that they were communicating to kids. In order to hit those designations, whether it was the dual credit for the college or the AP, they still had to hit those criteria. They still had to follow through with that. And that just from the high school credit end of it, that's where we would be staying on the pass fail. And there's been a lot of conversation between the APs and the dual institutions that we work with. And we've been very upfront saying for the college end and the AP end, you still have to do those things.
You got thumbs up on that one. All right. Thanks, Scott. All right, everyone. So I think we are bringing, Katie, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we are bringing our workshop to an end. And I'm going to propose, it is exactly, I believe, 7:25 on the dot right now. So I'm going to, and people can chime in, I'm going to propose maybe just taking a minute or two if you need to go run to the restroom. We've been at this for over an hour and a half, need to run to the restroom, or if you need to go grab a bottle of water or just something just to take 5 minutes, and then we'll jump back on again at 7:30. Does that sound okay?
Yep.
Okay. All right. All right, everyone on pause for 5 minutes. Thank you. All right, everyone, 7:30. So I am going to call this April 1st, 2020 meeting the Auburn School Committee to order. Let's begin with introductions. And I think one of the easiest ways to do this is simply to just go ward by ward. So Rose, I'll ask you to start off.
Rose Walker, Ward 1.
Pam, you have to unmute your mic so that you can introduce yourself as being here, please.
Hi, Pam Hart, Ward 2.
Karen Matthew, Ward 3.
Brian Belknap, Ward 4.
Dan Poisson, Ward 5.
Brian, somebody.
At large.
Carrier City Council representative.
There we go. And our 2 at large, please.
Faith Fontaine at large.
David Simpson at large.
All right. Welcome, everyone. Typically, we would have done the Pledge of Allegiance. And we're just not going to pass that part tonight. I do want to remind the public that this meeting, tonight's meeting, is being videotaped. It's being held through a Zoom session. It's being recorded and will be made available by Great Falls TV on the auburnmaine.gov website or on Spectrum Channel 1301. As well as on the city's YouTube channel. And just when we reach public participation, we do have a phone number that will be available. Superintendent Grondin does have access to that phone. The phone number is 784-6431, extension 1326. People can also email any of their school committee representatives if they would like to do that as well. So having done introductions, and letting people know what platform we are using tonight, we'll move to communications right now. So if anyone has communications, I would ask. And for this meeting, it's, you can leave your mics on and live. And let's just, we can use the chat box. I will be very careful to make sure that everything in the chat box is shared publicly. But if I miss something, please let me know. So let's start with communications, if anyone has communications. 3, 1, 2, 3. All right, seeing none. Moving on to consent agenda. Before we start and before I ask for the approval, I do want you to know that because of the way this is being recorded, we do have 2 executive sessions tonight. And so what will be tricky is to try to videotape this live and then go into executive session, come out of executive session, go into executive session, come out of executive session. So I am asking that we take the executive sessions and move them to the end of tonight's meeting. So we'll go through everything and then get into our executive session. So know that when you are approving tonight's consent agenda, it's not necessarily in the order that it is typed up on the agenda. I hope that makes sense. So with that, can I entertain a motion for the approval of tonight's rearranged consent agenda, as well as the approval of the March 18th, 2020 minutes?
So moved.
I think that was, sorry, can you, was a female voice I heard first?
Faith Fontaine.
Oh, Faith, thank you. Second? Brian, okay. And we need to do roll call, which means I will call you by ward, and then you have to say yes or no. So Ward 1, are you in favor of the consent agenda?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3 for me is a yes. Ward 4?
Yep.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Faith Fontaine at large?
Yes.
Dave Simpson?
Yes.
And the mayor's rep.
Yes.
Great. Motion approved, 8-0. Thank you. All right. Moving on. I've discussed public participation, so the phone lines are open. If anyone would like to chime in, again, it's 784-6431, extension 1326. Oh, wait a moment. This is, we are looking at different ways to do this as well. All right, I am going to move on from here. Student information is being waived right now. Our students are not going to be joining us, I don't believe, for the foreseeable future, although it would be great every once in a while we might have them pop in and just let us know how things are going for them. So moving on to Superintendent's Report. First thing, Katie, can you scroll it? I have my notes, but can you scroll for me? All right, I have my notes. So first thing up is business tonight. The approval of the approval of FY21 calendar dates. Part of your onboarding package for tonight's meeting, the dates included the start day of school, as well as locked-in vacation and holiday dates. However, no decisions have been made yet about early release Wednesday. So know that what we are being asked to approve tonight are the dates that were sent to you. So again, the start date of school, things like that.
I can review the dates if you'd like, and I do want to say one thing before we start.
Sure.
So there was a question about whether the Auburn School Department received iPad money from Apple when we started the one-to-one. The school department did not receive any money from Apple for the one-to-one. We paid for all of our devices. We did not receive anything from Apple regarding the one-to-one initiative. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay. All right. Okay.
And Adam reminded me. Adam was like, "You didn't answer one of the questions." So.
Oh, thank you. So it's taking a village right now.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Katie, anything you need to add to the calendar dates that I didn't just go over? They were the dates you sent us, which were pretty,
right. So
vacation, Thanksgiving, things like that. April, February vacation. Okay.
And everyone noted. First day of school, August 26th. Thanksgiving break will be November 25th to the 29th. December break, December 23rd to January 3rd. February break, February 13th to the 21st. April break, April 17th to the 25th. Last day of students with no snow days, June 7th. And last student day with 8 snow days is June 17th. And graduation is set for June 5th, 2021. And that would be new information. So we just want to approve those dates as so that we can publish that.
Okay. So can I entertain a motion to
approve?
Thank you, Dave.
Simpson.
Second, Faith Fontaine.
All right. Roll call. 1, Rose. Turn your mics off, people. So turn your mics on so you can be ready to go. Roll call. Pam?
Yes.
Myself is 3. Brian Belknap?
Yes.
Dan Poisson?
Yes.
Faith Fontaine?
Yes.
Dave Simpson?
Yes.
And Brian Carrier?
Yes.
Motion carries. All right. Executive sessions were moved. Whoops. Bring me back. I just got Faith. Oh, there's Pam. Bring me back. Bring me back to the agenda. We're on policy.
Oh, because I was moving to Michelle on policies.
Okay,
and
so
and
policy.
she needs the screen.
That's okay.
Sorry, she needed the screen, so I was.
That's okay. All right, let's mute our phone, our mics again, please.
This is fun. I hope you're having fun with this, people, right?
Are you having fun? This is like Zoom session number 99. Honest to goodness. So policies. So as part of tonight, your onboarding package tonight too, we all received and these are a lot of letters, EEAEA and EEAEE policies regarding student transportation, employee requirements, training and responsibilities, as well as school bus emergencies. So Michelle has provided us with that information. So I'll entertain a motion and then we'll get into discussion. So can I entertain a motion to approve the second reading of the 2 policies that I have just previously listed?
So moved.
Faith, second.
Second.
Brian Carrier. All right, roll call again. So no roll call yet. Let's enter into discussion, then we'll do roll call. All right, Michelle.
Okay. So Karen had suggested that there be an opportunity to just kind of review the process of policy making in this school committee. Some of you, this is one of those things where it's similar to a classroom. Some people have a lot of background knowledge and experience with policy making, and some of you have no prior experience. So it might be a good idea just to kind of get on the same page of what this is about. I sent to you a slide deck that I created as a resource, not as a presentation. I'm going to use it tonight to guide our discussion, but it's more of a resource for you about policy and how this process goes about. So I'm going to pull that up. If I can find where it is. I know, Scott, exactly what happened to you. Let's see. So you'll see this in your email if you haven't already. I shared this document with you. So let's go through it today. So as you know, one of your, well, maybe I can't do it. Oh, there we go. One of your roles, important roles as a school committee member is as a committee to set the policy for the district. You are policymakers, and that's what you do. And we're going to be working as the subcommittee that Brian Carrier and Dan Poisson are on, along with Scott Anier from the high school and Celeste Beaudet from representing elementary from Fairview. So we meet together and bring policy forward to you, recommend policy to be considered. So basically, the role of the committee, set policy. I'm going to delineate kind of one of the frequent, I won't say misconceptions, but mix up in policy setting is that who sets policy and who executes? Where are the roles delineated between you as a school committee and the administration? So in order to answer that, we've got to understand what policy is. But first, really simply put, succinctly, the role of the committee is to set policy, and it's the role of the administration to carry that policy out. So you write policy and approve policy, and then the administration works with staff to make sure that that's happening on an everyday basis. Okay, let's see. Okay. So let's go a little bit deeper. Let's talk about what policy means, because it has different meanings in different contexts. And I'm talking about tonight the policy that you set that becomes part of the school committee policy manual. So those are written guidelines adopted by the school committee. So there's your role. We talked about that already. These are general statements that the committee is making, and they're typically tied to those regulations coming out of statute that you're obligated to make sure is happening in our school department. So that's most of our policy that you are overseeing and developing is tied to the obligations that are set out in the school educational law statutes. So you're going to develop these. They're going to kind of give the direction to the school department. This is what you're going to do. They're broad in the way they're written. They're not overly specific at that level, typically. And they guide the staff in meeting those obligations. So they're going to define the purposes and they're going to prescribe action. But again, it's a framework for the superintendent and the district in carrying out the duties that you've communicated to us through the policy. Okay. And then as you've noticed now, you've been a part of it, policy has to have 2 readings, which means at 2 different school committee meetings, those policies will come up, and it has to have 2 approval votes in order for it to be adopted into the manual. Okay. Second thing, and again, this was a good example because we did this with our transportation policies. Sometimes the school committee will decide that the policy needs a bit more specificity. And that's when a procedure will be developed. And we had that happen with the school bus accident procedure that you approved in March. And so that gives more specificity. It becomes more specific. It gives a guideline, again, for carrying out that policy. So that policy will be implemented consistently across the district. And while those procedures are more specific than the policy, they still remain somewhat broad in general. And I'll get into the reason why in our next slide. They still give some latitude in there, but they do give more specificity on how that policy should be implemented. Sometimes the school committee will also decide that there needs to be a piece of evidence that goes along with that procedure that goes into your policy manual. We didn't have that happen, but we will have that happen when we look at the bullying policy. What those evidences usually are, sometimes they're a flow chart, but they're typically a form that we're going to use in our department, in our district, that helps us document that we're adhering to, we're complying with the procedure as it's spelled out. It's not every policy that's going to have a procedure, and it's not every procedure that has evidence in your school committee manual. And then those procedures and evidences only require one reading and one vote of approval to enter into the policy manual. And then the final part of policy development and implementation is the administrative procedures or the school procedures. Sometimes will be asked, what's your school policy on this? And this is what people are talking about. What's your procedure? Because we follow the school committee's policies. So it's not really the policy in the same way, but those terms will become interchangeable when they're talked about at the school or the department level. So basically what those are the procedures that come out of policy and procedure that you pass, and it's operationalizing those procedures and policies on the ground level. And the reason why the procedure at the school committee policy level isn't too specific, it's guidelines, but not overly specific, is that things like an individual school's resources or situation, the level, secondary versus elementary, or the department might need to develop procedures that are somewhat different in order to deal with that particular policy that's coming out of the school committee. So these procedures obviously aren't adopted by you all. They're not adopted by the school committee. They're developed in schools. A lot of times in Auburn, those will get fleshed out at our administrative team meetings, our A-team meetings, or our breakout level meetings. So the secondary will often talk about, so there's some consistency between AMS and EL and implementation if it's appropriate, or at the elementary levels, the elementary principals will get on close to the same page so that there's consistency. But those are developed there, and also with input from staff, whomever those staff people who are appropriate to have input, whether it's teachers or food service providers or bus drivers or whomever would be involved in those kinds of procedure making. And then obviously it's not approved by you, but you may ask to hear about some administrative procedure. So tonight was a really good example. You have a graduation requirement policy. And actually that's kind of a unique one where the procedure is embedded in that policy. It's a pretty hefty policy. And it talks about the credits that Scott was referring to, the 24 credits and what that means and how that's broken down. What Scott was talking about was an administrative procedure, right? He was talking about how that was going to be carried out right now, given our current situation. He's developing a procedure. Katie mentioned during tonight, we may need to come back and look at the policy again if there's something that's outside of what we've said in the policy currently for the current class of seniors. So it's a good example to kind of, you could see we've walked through or we've touched upon all levels of policy, both school committee and administration. So before I go to the next slide, questions?
I was just about to say, any questions for Michelle? We still do have a motion, so we'll get back to the motion, and probably before we vote on it again, Michelle, I'll have you bring it up. But right now, any clarifying questions?
Right.
All right. Chat box is empty.
So this is just really quickly, and I think most of you know this, but this is the process. If there's a need for a policy, again, usually coming out of regulation, or a review of a policy that we currently have, that comes up from multiple sources. We develop stakeholder groups. We pull them together, that those who are going to be affected by it. And for example, the food allergy, the allergy policy that's coming up, we've pulled in nurses, we've pulled in folks from the community who are knowledgeable, parents, and actually students. Pull that together and developing a policy that will go to the policy subcommittee that I talked about earlier. Mm-hmm. And once they've crafted a recommended policy or procedure, that will come to you for the vote. So I stuck that in here and I just realized I probably should have waited till after, and I apologize about that. Okay. So just again, the role of the committee is to set the policy, and the role of the administration is to execute the policy. That said, I'm going to stop sharing and go back to the two policies that are up for your review tonight, the school bus emergencies, EEA, I don't think there were any questions last time. This, again, was just a policy that was reviewed and brought to date with our current practices, and as well as a couple of things that needed to be changed in there.
Okay. All right. Any discussion on those? Either one of those policies? They were part of your onboarding package from last week.
So, Michelle, I have a question. And I think we discussed this last time too, as far as bus drivers, and we talked about food allergies and whether or not these bus drivers are adept to take care of emergencies involving food allergies. Is that part of this policy? Is that a requirement that they should know what to do? I realize calling 911 is the thing to do, but when you're having an anaphylactic reaction, calling 911 is probably the second thing you want to do. You want to try to do something quickly because things are happening very quickly. So I was just wondering about that.
So these two policies don't talk about that in specific, Pam.
Okay.
These two policies, one of them is talking about if there's an accident, what needs to happen in those cases, and then the trainings that they need in terms of bus driving. Now, that doesn't mean that those type of trainings you're talking about don't happen. Those trainings happen every year in general. And then in specific, if there's a student on a particular bus who has a need, those specific trainings will take place in not the large group setting, but in a small group with the nurse who is providing the training to the bus driver.
So do we need a policy for that specifically? Does that have to be part of this policy, or because it sounds like it's just a general thing? So I'm just wondering.
No, it's not. It's in our, you have a couple of policies that hit on that, and your allergy policy hits on that. We're going to be reviewing that. As I said, we're going to be reviewing that again, and bringing that to light more. In our procedure that's going to go with that policy. But that's the one that's going to come up. But there's another one too, and I'd have to go look up exactly the name of it, but it's emergency health. It's an emergency health policy.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. So any further discussion on these two policies that are before us? Okay, hearing none, let's do roll call, yes or no, because we do have a motion to approve these two policies. So unmute your mics and we'll hopefully go through this real quickly. Roll call, Rose Walker?
Yes.
Pam?
Yes.
Okay, Karen Matthews, a yes. Brian Belknap?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Thank you. Faith Fontaine?
Yes.
Dave Simpson?
Yes.
And Brian Carrier?
Yes.
All right, motion passes 8-0. Wonderful. All right, moving into committee reports. Moving on to, and I'm just going to go, hopefully Katie, leave it right on there. I've got them written on the side as well, but finance, anything to report out?
Not yet.
Brian Carrier, Dave Simpson.
No.
Okay. Policy Subcommittee, Dan Poisson, Brian Carrier.
We were supposed to be sitting with Michelle. We're going to get some dates to look at some other stuff that are coming up, but nothing right now.
Okay. All right. Wonderful. And Brian, while you're still on, City Council update?
Nothing.
Okay. Curriculum Subcommittee, I would think between, we did have something scheduled. However, I think just between with what our districts have both gone through, we'll get together again. We'll schedule something between Rose, myself, and Shelley on that one. Community Learning Center, Dave Simpson.
Nothing to report, Karen.
Okay. EL Building Committee, Katie's going to jump on with some information that we received last night. I was there as well as Pam Hart. Watching our cursor go everywhere.
Do you want me to talk?
Oh, I'm just waiting. Yeah, I was just waiting for you to pop them up so we can kind of go through.
Okay. So the building committee, I'll just keep going, I guess, is, as you can see with the site update, what happened is the building has been moved. So you can see that this green line.
It's not sharing, Katie. We're still seeing your agenda.
It's not sharing.
Sorry, that's why I wasn't saying anything yet. I'm like, we still have agenda.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I don't know what happened.
See what we can see, so that's okay.
Okay, I can see it.
There it is.
Uh-oh. That's why, because I'm bouncing it. Hold on. Can you see it now?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Yep, there it is.
So you can, the high school building has been moved. It was here where the green line is. So it was here. And because of this area being kind of soft soil area, the cost to build it up with retaining walls in order to hold the load of this part of the building, it just was not cost efficient whatsoever. So they've turned it here. And so the parking that was here has been moved down to here. It doesn't change where the fields are. It doesn't change where the stadium was. It more or less changes. Here's the parking. Here was the parking. And it goes in this angle. It also, yeah, go ahead, Karen.
I was going to say, so this was done with geological digs. They dug down, and once they revealed the soil that was underneath, these were people with degrees in dirt who basically said this was not, it was not supported. It wouldn't support the new building. So it wasn't just sort of done on a whim. It was some geological digs that were done.
Has the question been asked about the architecture and the windows and natural lighting, how it facing a different direction is going to light a different way?
Yeah, the architects addressed all of that last night as well. Shifted all the pictures have been shifted.
It's almost better.
Yeah,
is what they're saying. And remember, so now from here you'll be able to see that wing area. So yes, they're going to do some rendition of the building showing the natural light now that it's been moved around. So we'll see that later.
Was there any concern about ledge in that area?
Not that we're aware of.
Not that was discussed last night.
This is all going to go to the planning board because there was concern about the buffer here. You can see how close the building now is to this neighborhood. Mm-hmm. So that will probably be discussed at the planning board level. What's going to need to go here in order to support a buffer between the building and this neighborhood here. So we'll be working with the planning board on that. So here's the current building so that you can get a feel that it's sitting next to where the gym is in the back of the building here. The other thing we talked about is the site phases. So see this red line here? That's going to be a chain link fence. That's going to have the construction folks take over this side of the property line. That's phase 1. And that's going to happen January 2021. No, excuse me. Yes. Yeah. So that's going to be starting in the fall into the winter. As the bid goes out, they have to start working on the geothermal placements. They have to work on the bids, and then moving obviously the earth around to start getting ready to lay the building. But this is a major phase right here. Scott Anir, working with their engineer, Frank Crabtree, Adam, Billy Hunter, are all talking about parking, because as you can see, it's going to take over staff student parking that we have right now. So Scott has got almost all the staff on the property here, being creative about looking at how we're going to rearrange some areas up in the turnaround in the front of the building to allow for more parking. And then we're working with the city around student parking. So right now, there's no spots for students when we move into this phase 1. And we're going to keep talking about where we can have student parking, possible shuttle service for those students who need cars during the day for jobs and internships and things like that. So that's first phase. And then in the second phase, this is, if you go to the EL turnaround, there's a muddy area right in here. That's all going to be blasted to get ready to put fields in here. Phase 3 is taking down the gym and a wing here. And this is when the building is pretty much done. So there'll be talks about how we can utilize the building while still in the current building. And then phase 4 is here with the stadium. So you can see here's the timeline for each of the phases.
Can I just ask really quick, how much space is between the new building and the old building, or in the old building and section 3? It looks like it's really close.
It is very close.
It does, and that was brought up last night. And the architect did ensure us that there is space. While it looks that way on the rendering, there is workable space between those two areas. However, like Katie did say, phase 3 that will be kind of coming down.
Right. The phase 2 and phase 3 will be done in the summer. So the minute school closes, they'll start tackling these phases during the summer.
So we won't have students present.
Right. And then phase 4 is when the building is occupied, and that's when all the fields and stuff will be done. So phase 2 has to get ready for phase 4. Okay. So that's kind of updating you mostly on that. The floor plan does not change. Yeah. We thought we would show you some pictures of, here's the front of the town square. So when you walk in the building.
And these are with the building being pivoted and changed, where you're seeing the sunlight come in. That is with the pivoting and changing of the building.
Yeah, they thought it might be or it might not be. I think Mark was checking Karen on whether that was or wasn't.
Oh, okay. I really thought he said this is with the natural light. Someone asked that question last night.
Yeah, and I think he said, I'm not sure.
Oh.
I think Lisa said she wasn't sure.
Okay.
So it may be. But you can see here's where the administrative offices would be. Here is the where you would turn to go into cosmetology. Here's the cafeteria. And so I'm going to give you another shot. Here's the salon. So people would check into the main office if they had appointments to these areas. Here's the student commons where the library is. Media center. Here's the cafeteria. This whole slideshow is up on our new elhs.org site, so if you want to look at it more. And here's the Google stairways that will take you to the second floor as well. And there's the courtyard. There's another shot of where the trays will go in is here. And there's where the food is picked up. Here's one of those learning nodes, they call it, but there's classrooms, but students can work out here, have some displays. Here's down a hallway look. There's where that learning and colors are going to direct kids on where they are in the school. If I'm in the green section, that's over here. Here's the performing arts. And what's amazing by these views is to believe that it's 1,200 seats. So there's view 1, view 2, the third view, and there's the wide view.
Being a parent of a drama child and a chorus kid, the theater just blows me away.
I know. It is amazing. It's spectacular.
Mm.
Yeah. And then they just kind of went over.
Oh no, not this. Oh, here comes. Oh yes.
Yes.
Yes. So here's some new information. So in addition to needing to shift the building, and then in addition to needing to work out what parking will look like for staff, what parking will look like for students, we don't want to overwhelm the side streets. Obviously, a lot of work will need to be done in that. This piece got brought up, was discovered as well, that our current Edward Little building has been identified, I guess, Katie, or
determined eligible
as in 2018, determined eligible as an historical site of buildings, schools built in the 60s. And so, what's that?
Post-World War II architecture.
Post-World War II architecture. And so there's a couple of different choices that, I mean, it's not, of course, I asked the question of, so what does that mean for us? And that means we're going to have to do some historical archiving of the building itself before demolition can happen. And Katie, I think you're a little bit more adept at really understanding what that means before we can tear the building down.
Yeah, so we're going to be obviously working hand in hand with the Maine Historical I'm not going to say that right. Preservation, right? Yeah. Conservation plus the Army Corps, working with them on what does that mean? What does it look like? They have special film that it has to be done through. So they'll be helping us along the way of how to capture the site, the building, so that it can be archived for, historical
purpose.
Yeah. So there's more information to come on that.
Yep. So that was a new discovery.
Right. And then they're working on an owner's rep. The DOE is working with Adam and I and Harriman around getting a representative for owners that overlook thing, help guide us. And then Harriman's looking at a commissioning agent who oversees all the papers and stuff that's being done around bidding. And here's our schedule. So they're working on the construction documents. It's down, all those documents have to go to the number of, everything, down to the little details of every little classroom. So they're working hard on that. Then there's permitting coming up in the fall and bidding. And then the winter, the final funding approval by the state board to be completed in 2024, the whole thing. And then you can see what's coming up, which is we have another meeting with DOE on May 4th. And so all going well.
Okay.
So we just want to make sure you were kind of in the loop of some major changes, especially where the building is.
Yeah, especially since the building has shifted. Okay,
Right.
Great. Thank you. And again, Katie, can you repeat the website where people can find this information? This
Newyelhs.org.
Thank you. And I think you
You're
can find a
welcome.
link to it through the Auburn School Department website, or is that not up yet?
Yeah, it is on there.
Yep. Okay. All right. Great. Thank you.
Aaron, just to let everyone know, it's not up yet, but it'll be up tomorrow.
Okay. All right. I knew it was like, is it there yet? Okay, great. Thanks, Adam. Okay. Getting back to committee reports and subcommittee reports. DEI with Pam Hart and Dave Simpson.
That's kind of been we've put that on hold for now since the whole COVID-19.
Yeah.
We're kind of just on hold right now.
Okay. All right. Great. Superintendent search. We are set to hold our first round of interviews this Saturday with 5 applicants, all done through Zoom. And the interview committee consists of 2 school committee members, myself and Dave Simpson, along with 4 teachers, 4 admin, and 4 community members. So we are still following our timeline of first round of interviews on April 4th, second round of interviews happening on April 11th. So that's continuing on the timeline. Technology, Brian Belknap, I'm not sure if you've had any more meetings since our last meeting.
No, we have not. Where the parent advisory was canceled, we were going to be on that. Peter and I have not touched base yet to figure out next steps.
Okay.
But have plans to do that for sure.
Okay, great. Thank you. Wellness with Faith?
No, we haven't met.
Okay. Audit again, Faith and Brian?
Nothing as of right now.
Yeah. Okay. Transportation's appeals? Dan
Nothing as of right now.
Brian? Nothing. Okay. Share Center, Rose?
Nothing is right now.
Okay. Did I lose anything? Negotiations?
Just the upcoming one that we're going to talk about in executive session and for the food nutrition. And then we have negotiations, I think, in a couple of weeks. I think Adam's scheduled right now as kind of a tentative date.
All right. And then parent advisory is, again, I think I heard you say, Brian, on hold right now.
Correct, as far as I know.
Okay. All right, great. Before we move into executive session, upcoming meetings, Katie just quickly knocked one off. The Joint City Council meeting for April 6th at 5:30 has been canceled. We will not need that one. So our next regular meeting will be, I'm going to add one in here though. We are going to meet, and it's not on here yet. We are going to meet next Wednesday, which I believe is April 8th, for workshop for the purpose of meeting for superintendent search, which will be at 6 o'clock. So that will give school committee members an opportunity to get ready for the April 11th. So plan on next Wednesday, 6 o'clock, school committee workshop for the purpose of superintendent search. And then that'll bring us to April 11th when we have our next set of interviews that Saturday, and then regular meeting scheduled for the 15th workshop and then 15th. So I think we're all good on those things. All right. So with that, yes.
Excuse me. Did you say it was at 6 o'clock?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
April 8th, next Wednesday, 6 o'clock.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Absolutely. All right. Let me find my notes on moving us into executive session. Hold on one moment. So Katie, can I do it? Let me ask a clarifying question. Can I move into executive session? And when I do this, can I make the motion for both executive sessions at once?
You can.
Okay. All right. So at this time, I'd like to enter into motion to enter into executive session. I'm going to give you a couple of titles. Pursuant to Title I, MRSA, Section 405C, for the discussion to consider the acquisition of property, and executive session pursuant to Title I, MRSA, Section 4056F, discussion of food service on opening negotiations, because access to that information by the general public is prohibited, by 1 MRS Section 4023B. So can I have a motion to enter into executive session?
So moved.
Thank you, Brian. Second?
Second.
Oh, sorry, I didn't catch that one.
Second.
Okay, Dan Poisson. And let's go roll call. Rose?
Yes.
Pam? Pam, give me a thumbs up or a yes. Okay, myself, Ward 3 is yes. Brian Belknap, Ward 4.
Yes.
Okay, Ward 5, Dan Poisson.
Yes.
Kate,
Yes.
Dave Simpson,
Yes.
and Brian Carrier.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha, Pam. Brian Carrier? I lost Brian. All right, motion still passes at this point. Okay, so let's enter into executive session. We should no longer, this should be videotaped. Let's get confirmation that we are no longer being streamed live or videotaped. Faith,